Nithyananda everyone, this is Prasiddha and I'm going live today after a little bit to share with you guys one topic which I love speaking on, which is the science of manifestation. And why I was just thinking about this is because I was actually talking to Swarupa Priya just a few minutes ago, Manitya Swarupa Priyananda, my friend here, and she was sharing how things that we might have visualized as a child, how those things have become our life now. And I just remembered all of these things which when I was a small kid, when I was a little girl, like even 3, 4, 5 years old, there were so many ideas I had for my life, so many visions I had for my life. I mean, I would literally, I don't know, I'm sure you guys can relate to this also, like there would be so many situations where I would literally have visions, like I would see this picture of myself, older, doing this or doing this or doing this in the world, right? And there's a few specific ones I wanted to bring up, which is just really eerie looking back on, because they have actually become my real life, my reality. So when I was I must have been 5 years old in kindergarten, I actually would always tell my parents that I was gonna go live in India. And they would ask me why are you saying that? And I said, I don't know. I had no logic behind it. I didn't understand if I would be living here or working here or what it would be, but I just kept saying, I would say so strongly, so seriously, I know I'm meant to be in India. And I had no idea why I was saying this as a little girl. And I was raised Catholic, right? I was in a Catholic school, actually. So I was around kids, very sheltered. I was always in a school uniform. Nobody did anything out of line. Everything was so moral. And even, having dyed hair or piercings was completely forbidden at my school. I remember when I was maybe 12 years old, 11 or 12 years old, I didn't know anybody with nose piercings or any kind of piercings like that, none of my friends. So I didn't even have that inspiration or idol to look up to. But I got obsessed with the idea of having my nose pierced. And I didn't know where it came from, and my parents thought it was so random because I didn't have it wasn't like I had any role models in my life that had piercings or any of this kind of stuff. And it wasn't even like a casual thing for me. I was so seriously telling them it was so important for my identity to have my nose pierced. And why I bring this up now is because actually there's, as you can see, I actually have both sides of my nose pierced now. The reason for this is actually because there's a Vedic science to it. In Hinduism, while you'll see a lot of Indians, a lot of Hindus have their nose pierced, is because there's actually a subtle science of energy going into piercings and tattoos. So it's not just a thing we do to decorate our body, but actually there's a science to it. So, for example, when a woman pierces her nose on the left side first, it actually relieves pain in the body. So not only does pain become less tangible in the system, one becomes a yogi, but specifically for childbirth, there's actually science to it where as a young girl you'll get your nose pierced because it actually makes the subtle energy center, the nadi point, which is pressed here when you're having a piercing, it actually relieves pain during childbirth, making it able to be an enlightening process for you and the baby. So there's just, I can keep rambling on, but there's so much of a beautiful science to everything. And all of these things started adding together, and when I remember back on my life, it's just so funny because my parents would always tell me, I would talk about how I was gonna go travel the world, and they didn't know why. I didn't know anyone that was doing that. And I always knew I would not live where I grew up. I was gonna get out of California, and I knew that I was gonna go do something big with my life. And even on top of all my, self-doubt or self-hatred or all my insecurities, there was some voice inside of me which knew my life was going to be really different, really big. And even now it's weird because, it's funny to talk about ourselves. We're kind of raised to believe we should be super humble, but in a self-deprecating kind of way where we don't ever acknowledge ourselves or stand for what we are. But I've learned that's actually not necessary, and it's okay to acknowledge the reality of who you are, which is actually a very powerful being, a very divine being. And I love watching because it's actually, I feel like a viewer for my own life. I feel like an observer of my own life where I'm seeing all of these things happening through me, through my body, but I don't necessarily relate it to me. I don't think this is just me. I am much more than this body and this mind, but I see so much happening through this body, which is becoming my reality more and more every day. And one other visualization as a child, which I always had, was I would always see myself on like a stage, like a public stage. And I'm somebody who absolutely is terrified of speaking in public. I would hate to be in front of crowds. I hated attention, especially in groups of people. I was never an attention seeker. I hated people who like to be the center of attention. It was like my pet peeve. But for some reason, I always had this vision of myself as a little girl. When I was in my 20s or 30s, I would always see myself as older, going around like around the world, speaking on stage to people. And I didn't know what about, and I didn't know why I kept seeing this, but I kept thinking, one day I'm gonna be talking to people in a very public way. And I didn't know why, because I didn't actually desire it. From my logic, I didn't desire it, but I kept having this vision. And it's crazy to see how that's already become reality, because I've already gone into a world tour this year of my life. I'm only 22 years old. I went on a world tour. I went all the way from Vancouver to Seattle to San Diego to across the country to the East Coast and back up to Toronto, speaking on stage to mass groups of people. And it's so crazy to look at my life and see how it's become this, because I can't understand it, and I know that so much is happening through me, through this body, which is just manifesting from the divine, from the cosmos, whatever we relate to, right, as that source energy. For me, it's Swamiji, my guru. And I know that he's doing so much for my life just through this body. I know the only thing I can actually give myself credit for, really, is saying yes. Because the only thing that's needed from our part to make our dreams a reality, or our lives become something big which we used to believe as kids, but sometimes as we go through life, we forget, or we get confused into thinking that there's not all these possibilities for us. We lose that hope, that possibility. But the best thing you could ever do for yourself, this will be my message for the day. The best thing you could ever do for yourself is just say yes. Just make yourself available to let life flow through you. That's the only thing I can say I've ever done right in my life. Everything else I cannot give credit for. Everything else has just been a blessing for me, honestly. It's just been such a gift. That's how I feel. But just saying yes and putting yourself there, making yourself available, is all life needs to work through you. All the divine needs to work through you. And I've seen this more so than ever in my life here in India. So many people ask me, like, how do you do that? How did you move across the country? That's crazy. How did you leave everything you know behind, go live in an ashram in India? How is your family letting you do this? Don't you miss everyone? How are all these things happening? We come so much from the angle of loss, but I have gained so much here that I could never even tell you in words. The transformation that happens through me every day here is like 10 years outside every day. It's like living 10 years every day. How much happens to you here in this place? How much growth and evolution happens? Because my whole life now is, I get the blessing of only living all my time and energy towards spirituality, towards conscious growth for myself and for others. So I don't have to ever stress about paying bills or working or doing something I don't want to be doing with my time and all of this. Every moment of my day I get to focus on me, on my inner world and my outer world, which is a reflection of me only. So it's very intense, surely, and very different than many people's lives outside, but it's the best choice I could have made for myself, and I very clearly know that, because I see myself expanding, and that's the entire point of our lives, right? So I realized so much of these childhood visions I had for my life wouldn't have happened if I was coming from a place of fear. If I would have been scared to take that first step, or to get on the plane, or to, leave everything I know behind, or to leave my university with 1 year left because everyone was telling me, this is so stupid for you to do, you have 1 year left, you're so intelligent, why wouldn't you get your degree? See, it's not that any of that is wrong, but it's a very limited thinking. because there's a whole other angle to life, which to me is much more important, and that is my conscious growth, my spirituality. That kind of learning is the only education which I seek, and everything else follows through that only. So it's really beautiful to look back on my life, and I'm still so young, and I know I can't even imagine what else is to come for me. But man, this has been a crazy year, you know. I left school, I left everything I knew behind, I moved to India, I got married, I moved to an ashram. I'm living here in the hub of spirituality of Hinduism with my guru. I became a yogi. I'm a yoga acharya full time now. I went on a world tour, you know, all of these things. It's really amazing to see, and it's only because I just started saying yes to life. And that's only because of the teachings which have been so deeply instilled in me, being here and living in the space of my guru. I mean, if you think about it, this is the last thing I'll say. If you think about it, you know, you go throughout your life as a young kid, and there's probably like a lot of people you look up to, right? A lot of role models you have, like a teacher, or even maybe the president, or some celebrity, right? You see these people and you think, what an incredible human being. Imagine that times a million. Imagine, like, okay, people you've heard about, say like the Dalai Lama or Buddha or the Pope. Imagine if you met them in person. That really, they carry so much of an energy, so much of an impact. But imagine meeting somebody who is also beyond even that type of being. That is who Swamiji is. Whether he's your guru or not, or whether you believe in him or not, anyone that meets him, you can see that space he carries. And to be living with a being like that is an experience which there is no words for. Like what an experience for my life, you know. So thank you guys for listening in, and thank you so much for being a part of my journey also, and let me know if you guys have any questions about my life here or what I'm up to, and how you can also manifest so much things for your life, because it truly is a science. It is a science you can learn to manifest your desires, your dreams into reality. So if there's anything I can help you manifest, please let me know. I'm here and available to help that happen for you also. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Nithyananda.